The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Verl Workman here, and welcome to RISmedia's broker webinar series. We're excited to be here today. We have some great guests, and we have great information to share with you today. I want to first take a minute and thank our panelists for being part of this call today, because the content and the information as a result of the survey, What Keeps Brokers Up at Night, is what we're going to be discussing on this call. And we've invited John Sylvester, who's the Senior Director of Broker Services for Better Homes and Garden Real Estate, to join us today, and as well as Amy Cherew, who's the Vice President of Platform Development. And between the two of them, they have an enormous amount of experience in not only technology, but also as entrepreneurs in helping businesses grow. I'd first like to introduce John. John's got over 15 years experience as an operator, entrepreneur, a business consultant. He's a strong communicator. He's an active, driven leader who operates with a really high level of business savvy and entrepreneurial spirit to his core. And you got to know, John, whenever I hear that I've got somebody that has a strong entrepreneurial spirit at their core, that's a kindred spirit. I think I came out looking for something to sell, and it's been that way my whole life. And so I love that you have that entrepreneurial spirit and enthusiasm. I asked John to give me a couple of things that a lot of people don't know about him, and he said that I'm an entrepreneur. I've got some businesses in Memphis, Tennessee, and fun thought, he's got a cool fusion boutique that does stuff with the Memphis Grizzlies, and that he comes from an entertainment background, had Justin Timberlake as a client, which I think my wife in the other office overheard, and her ears perked right up and said, "I want concert tickets to his new tour." So just know that that's coming down the wish list. I love that you're here, and so thank you for being with us. We're gonna have a little bit of fun as we talk about some of the insight that you were able to gather with this What Keeps Brokers Up at Night survey. And then I also welcome John.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Glad to be here, and look forward to an informative hour and having some fun.
I think we're going to have some great interaction and a great time. I want to get my right screen up here and share my screen. Okay, so the next I want to introduce Amy. Now, Amy and I have a little bit of a history. We go back a few years, don't we, Amy?
Yes, we do, Verl.
I don't know. Back in the late 90s, I sold my company to Homes.com, and I was introduced to Amy and her team, and was blown away at the intense level of execution that everybody that worked on and around Amy was able to accomplish. And I'd never seen anything like that. She's been in the industry a long time, has developed amazing relationships, and we've been at events together. We've seen each other on the stage. It's been fun to watch her as not only as she's grown professionally, but as she's helped other people grow. She's one of the people that I look at in the industry as having a high level of, I want to call it, the right kind of influence. Is that fair to say, Amy? You have the right kind of influence. People listen to you that matter, and I think that's a really high compliment. She's as the Vice President of Platform Development for Franchisor Better Homes and Gardens. Amy's responsible for growing the brand's educational and training platform, which is no small task, as well as creating and expanding innovative agent tools and technologies offered to the entire brand's network. She's got more than 30 years experience in real estate, including sales, marketing, training, sharing what she's learned about the use of technology and social media and in real estate, and she does it all across the country. And it's a pleasure to be on a call with you, Amy. Thank you for joining us on this call today.
Thanks, Verl. Looking forward to it.
Let's have let's open up the call, if I can, John, and let's just talk a little bit about the purpose of the survey, and then we'll get into some of the insights that we were able to discover as you got results from the surveys of what keeps brokers up at night. And I'm sure you hear that a lot. I do ask that of brokers as you're out of the field talking to your brokers and owners.
Yeah, obviously a big part of this thing is being leaders in organizations is that there's always problems, and we always learn about that, and there's always stresses that we have. As a leader, you just hope to have better problems the following year. You just learn that they're always going to be there, but it's an acknowledgement about what's out there, and then also hopefully providing you guys on the phone and our clients to abroad with some solutions and some tactical things to do to help answer those.
I love that. So let's jump right into that. You should all be seeing my screen. Can somebody just verify that you're seeing my screen? It should be the single slide of what keeps brokers up at night.
Yes, Pearl, I'm seeing it.
Okay, great. So that's scrolling through a lot of content on that single page. I don't know how to pause that. There we go. All right, so John, let's talk about who the respondents were and what kind of things they talked about as they responded to the survey.
Okay. Yeah, so what we wanted to do was just sort of send out and reach to as many folks as we could about these specific areas, but then also give it in a way that, in a format that we could actually draw some conclusions from. And since we've gotten those back, you know, Amy and myself have sort of looked through what the response was and sort of gleaned some sort of takeaways from it, and found some interesting things out there, actually. I think when we looked through the data there were sort of three things that popped out, and I'll just sort of throw these out really quickly here. One of the most interesting things, and you see it sort of right there at the top, is that 51% of the respondents cited lack of inventory as the most pressing issue that they're currently facing. We'll get into that, I think, in a little bit, but so that was one of the biggest things that kind of puts lack of inventory out there as the most pressing thing that we saw. I think the other thing that came foremost out there was a lot of talk about recruitment. And this is nothing new in the real estate world, but the interesting thing is, while there's recruitment is sort of put throughout all of the feedback from top to bottom of the survey, pretty much, there wasn't much talk about retention. So I think, you know, as we get through this next hour, that's sort of an interesting dynamic that we might want to dig into a little bit more. And then the third thing too was it actually sort of pivots off of the challenge of recruiting new people, and that is the fear of new business models. So there's an interesting sort of correlation there as we become more fearful of new entrants that come into a marketplace. It competes against us, and how that almost impacts our ability or our perceived ability to go out and actually recruit people. So couple of high-level, very quick things from the inventory, the recruitment to retention piece, and then also this sort of correlation between business model, confidence in your own business model, and the ability to recruit new people as well. So just a couple of things. I don't know if Amy has anything else to.
John, just the lack of inventory again, which we will discuss when we get into this next slide.
I think it's interesting when we talk about lack of inventory being such a big problem in the industry. I hear that everywhere we go. It doesn't matter where I'm speaking or where the event is. You know, everybody comes up and says, well, our market's really different. We don't have a lot of inventory. I hear that pretty much in every market.
Right. Yeah, it's funny, right? Like, it's a factor for sure, I think, but the leaders that are out there who answered this in an affirmative manner, or this does kind of keep up, I think the important thing is that the silver lining is that, look, it's a problem, not a mess. And to me, a mess is when problems kind of coexist and there's a bunch of problems that are correlated. But this, to me, the lack of inventory, what we see is there's a lot of very positive things that are happening all around that. I think if we look at what the market's doing, shifting powers from a buyer to a seller is natural, and it's a good thing to help secure that. But if we take a step back and we're honest with ourselves, 2016 was a 10-year high in terms of existing home sales. 2017 I think is going to eclipse 16 if it's not out already yet. And so we're looking at 11-year highs there. So plenty to be excited about there.
What I think is interesting is the perception is, excuse me, that there's no inventory. And I don't think that's the reality. They're selling a lot of houses. It's just that they're selling so fast that there's not a lot of standing inventory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
John, I was going to say, I like to tell agents that complain of lack of inventory. I say, you know, let's do an MLS search and see how many houses sold in the last 30 days. And the number is usually pretty big. I said, the problem isn't there's not inventory, it's that you're not selling it. And so what can you do differently to change that outcome so that you're part of those transactions that are happening, as opposed to blaming the market for your lack of ability to succeed.
And Burl, this is Amy. Burl, I think this is where brokers and owners and managers need to be able to communicate down this kind of information. Shameless plug for RISMedia and other think tanks out there. There's data that can be shared, and as long as brokers can bring it down to the company, the zip code, the location where their office is, and share data that they should be gathering every month from their MLS, or if they use broker metrics, there are numbers. If they track, they can prove that there is business out there. And John, you and I discussed quite a few other areas other than just skill building, to your point, Burl, to get the listings. There is other business, and you have to know what's going on in your market where that new listing business is. So I had some ideas, so did you, John, on what those were.
Oh. How about him? Are you there?
Oh yeah. So John, did you want to share some of yours, and then I can share mine?
Sorry, Amy, my phone went. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. That communicating the value proposition and what's going on in your local market is so critical, and tapping into resources like RISMedia are huge, because you have to be a local expert. My phone went dead, and so I was talking, but it was like this big pause right there. Sorry about that.
So Burl, some of the numbers, there's a lot of great numbers in broker metrics, but also knowing what's going on in your community. John and I have talked about new construction. That's a big conversation now, but being married to a builder, that can take 3 to 4 years to get off the ground. So it is there, but there is an opportunity for agents to get into that. We talked about shadow inventory, which in certain markets is going to come back with a roar now that the mortgages that happened 5 years ago are coming back with interest rate increases. And then knowing who the market in your area is, like the millennials, empty nesters. I think about the retirement inventory. Who is the conversation? Who is the client in your market? But John, you had an interesting point. You call it your quote was "motivate the indifferent," which I thought was interesting. If you could share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that goes back to sort of taking the mindset or the perspective of if we saw lack of inventory or low inventory levels the way that they are, along with lagging sales, total sales that are out there, I'd be much more concerned about this. But I just think that there's plenty of people that will also be out there. It doesn't mean it's not a problem. We certainly understand that it can make it harder to sort of mine these listings that are out there. But motivate the indifferent is really to sort of challenge your agents to find those folks, whether they're move up, move down. Maybe they don't know how much equity they truly do have in the home. Maybe it's just that they don't have time to go look for what is available that maybe not be moving, and trying to find some potential buyers for that. But it creates an opportunity for you as a leader or a business owner to really challenge your sales force to get out, or your agents to get out there and find creative ways to move that needle from indifference to some sort of selling.
So one other thing, Burl, that I always train is price banding. You talk about there is inventory. I love that idea to share that is truly inventory being sold. It's just selling so quickly. That's not happening in my home state of Connecticut, but that's a different story. But being able to price band, show agents how to price band areas of their market. It could be zip codes, it could be communities, and there has to be 15 houses in every price band at least, and then you track what happens in that price band in your market over time. So what happens if someone comes up to you and talks about the market, you know right away how to have that conversation, and that makes you more of that listing expert. So we'll talk more about agent productivity and how to do some training to do that. But if no one's doing price banding out there for your marketplace, you should know average days on market, list to sale price, and other numbers for every price band of your market. A price band can be 50,000 as long as there's 15 houses in it. Very powerful to communicate down to your sales associates. An example would be, I see you in the grocery store, Verl, and you say, hey, what's going on in my neighborhood? I saw the Smith house just sold for $750. I'm thinking I could probably get $850. And I could say, Verl, I'm so excited, you know, you're going to move. I'd love to see what you've done to the house. Just so you know, last year, between $650 and $750, 32 houses sold in your area. But from $750, I'm just using numbers here, to $850, only 8 houses sold. But you know what? When can I come over? Let's see what you've done, and we'll figure out how we can get a great marketing plan in place. So giving that kind of data will help.
Love the data and great dialogue. John, I was gonna ask you a question about you know, whether we're in a buyer's market or seller's market, and what kind of message that sends to the market.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, when inventory is down and we've got those opportunities, it's definitely shifted more towards the sellers. And I think it's an important part of what's going on right now is to set clear expectations, whether you're working with a buyer or your expectations with the agents. And I think part of that is really controlling the narrative in this whole, you know, inventory is our biggest challenge right now. And I said I keep going back to, and we're all doing it here on this conversation, is really deconstructing these numbers and saying, look, yes, inventory may be at a 1 month or 2 month low, which is well off equilibrium of the market of 6 months, but yet we're still selling, you know, 5.3 million houses of existing home sales in a year, and we still have over 500,000 of new construction sales that are happening. And knowing those numbers in your particular market and keeping the focus on that, and again, looking at the problem, because again, it is an acknowledgement that low inventory is a problem, but then also understanding that you've just niched your problem out. So you know exactly what it is, and running full force to attack it and position your company the best way that you can to find creative ways, again, setting expectations around what that means, and then finding creative ways, as Amy has alluded to on a couple of ideas, whether it's new construction relationships, shadow inventory, some of the moving of the needle past indifference as well. So hopefully that helps a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I think it's just it's a fascinating discussion, because the perception of what's really going on is very different than the reality of what not only we see. So, you know, the fact that so many brokers said that their number one challenge is low inventory tells us that there's a lot of opportunity to educate brokers on how to deal with the fast selling inventory that's existing right now, and how do they put themselves in a position to be able to be to take advantage of the opportunities that exist right there. You know, when you're in a seller's market, I mean, the price values go up, and it's a great time to sell your home. And so we have to engage conversations with consumers so that they understand that when you're in a seller's market, now's the time to sell it. Take advantage of the appreciation that's happened over the last year or two, and let's get you into another house and do it again.
Absolutely, it really helps you kind of identify that. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about new business models as a just kind of a high level concept. So
this again is something that I think that we've heard loud and clear as we come through. Now, not understanding completely who we have all on the phone, I'm sure they represent a swath of business models. So I'll just sort of be generic within how we construct these things. But in any industry that you look in, you know, you've seen this happen with new entrants coming in from everything from healthcare to cruise ships, right? Where the challengers that come in and make big movements early on sort of scare us a little bit, right? They move the needle in their own performance. They grow. They get investments that make headlines, which you've seen with a couple of companies. If you work more in the traditional realm, or if you're on the opposite side of the spectrum, you know, you're looking at what traditional is and what they make up as a market. So no matter what side you're on, you know, there's certainly things to be aware of in it. So it doesn't surprise us that it's actually it kind of resonated itself with the response that we got off the survey there. I think the interesting thing, though, is the more that you see, or the more that you as a leader become fearful of other business models that are out there, by default, we probably become a little less confident in our own model, which then does what, right? It's hard if we're not fully convinced in our own model, then how do we really present that out to sell to another agent, right? How do you convince them to hop on board if you as a leader is not fully convinced on your model? So I think it presents an opportunity to really kill two birds with one stone on these things, is to circle back, test your model out, develop some resiliency and confidence around what you're trying to do and who you're trying to be in the marketplace. And I think that's going to also help you communicate that very effectively with agents, and it should help you move the needle in influencing or persuading agents to come on board with you.
Yeah, I love your thoughts around that. I wonder how the emergence of new business models can help brokers and owners refocus on what it is they do well and create their unfair, competitive advantage in a statement, so that I know for me, when I see a new business model or somebody come in and compete with me, it makes me want to be better at what I do. I'm not afraid of them. It just makes me want to up my game. And so I love the competition that new business models bring, because it forces me to change the way I look at the world. And not be comfortable.
and it is. And what's funny is, like, we all buy things, and we all appreciate transformation. We all appreciate progress in areas or in industries where we make purchasing decisions or we're the consumer, but yet a lot of the times our human behavior of the ones that we work in is we're very adaptive, not wanting to change, right, and not wanting to progress. But for those, I was talking to some clients at a presentation about 6 months ago or so, and one of the things we talked about was like, look, raise your hand if you would want to own a taxi company right now, or you want to be in entertainment or own a record label right now, right? Or want to be in healthcare right now with those things. So in every one of these industries, you see this, and it's healthy. It forces those that are incumbents to really move the needle on progress and wake up every day and make sure that you're doing the things necessary to innovate and continually provide value and try to provide value at more effective rates. And that's a good thing for consumers too as well. So I think it's something that should be embraced, but then also something that can be put in perspective too. I think the important piece is that you don't overreact to new business models that come in. And I don't want to take up the lion's share of time here, but there's certainly some things to go around doing that. But now you're starting to see it a lot more in the last 12 months than I did, say, 5-6 years ago, where it wasn't quite as prevalent in terms of the fear factor of it.
Yeah, and I think that the consumer confidence in the relationships that the individual agents and brokers have in their communities makes a big difference when emerging business models come in with in what they're selling is low price instead of high service. And so we have an opportunity to increase the quality of the services we provide and capitalize on the brand equity that we've built as brokers and owners over the last decades or longer.
Right. And I think as far as a takeaway when it comes to sort of this model, and also kind of pivots into recruiting, which I know Amy is our expert on the recruiting and retention piece of what we do. But I think that the easiest thing that an owner can do is going to be match whatever the challenging company in your marketplace does, right? And there's always a question. I get a lot of questions from my clients saying, should I just match it, and should I figure that out? And the important piece to know, it's the easiest decision, but most of the time, in fact, almost absolute, it's the wrong decision. A lot of the times these challenging companies are built for the models that they are, and you as an incumbent, or you as the way that your current structure is, are not. So, there's certainly things where it gives you an opportunity to really sort of take a step back, look at the value you provide, which, by the way, if you want to be successful in recruiting, don't try to be successful in recruiting. Be valuable to the agents that you want to recruit. And if you're valuable to the agents that you want to recruit and retain, then you're going to be successful in recruiting. And you have to be your worst critic when it comes to the value that you provide as far as a leader in an organization to what an agent's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that. So Amy, I'm curious, in your opinion, with all of the training and education that you do with brokers and owners on this topic, what's more important, recruiting new agents or keeping the ones you already have?
That is an unfair question, and I cannot answer it on the grounds it will incriminate. It is both. And Burl, I think you're going to get to a little bit later, but when John was speaking, I hope that we address making sure you know as a company your strengths and weaknesses, and I think we're going to tackle the value proposition a little bit later, because I have some talking points on that I'd like to share, because everybody's watching those competitors and emerging business models. And to John's point, we get calls from brokers all the time. How do I compete against X? Or so-and-so is invading my market. What is the messaging for that business model? And it goes back to your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and the threats, but being able to articulate your value prop. So I can go into recruiting and retention, but I did want to make sure that we do talk about being able to articulate your strengths. So you tell me where you want to go, Verl.
Yeah, why don't we talk here about recruiting and retention a little bit, and then we'll address, after we get into recruiting and retention, we'll talk about some of those things, agent productivity, technology, and then we'll wrap it up with being able to articulate your value proposition, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's great. I just didn't want to lose that thread there, so thank you. So I think they're both as important. I would say if you have a good culture at your company and you've worked on that, retention is a little bit easier. Recruiting is an ongoing battle, but I think it has to be approached just like a salesperson approaches their business plan for their year. And I see that doesn't happen a lot. Who's going to be doing that recruiting at your company? Is it you? Do you wear too many hats? Do you have cape syndrome, where everything is, you stand with your hands on your hips and you go, I can do it. I am Superman, and not all of us are Superman. So maybe finding out who's better at recruiting and knowing your numbers. So I think the first thing is mindset with recruiting. Who should be doing it? And if it's not you, get the right person in place and figure out compensation. And the mindset is, it's not just a couple of times a year. You have to recruit all year, because if you have a pipeline of recruits, if someone leaves to want another business model, you're not throwing the store away at them. You can say, you know what, I'm going to leave the door open. We have an alumni group. We love you. If anything doesn't work out where you're going, come on back, but you're not flipping out and throwing all sorts of money and bonuses and things at them, because you don't have to. I think the next thing is knowing what percentage of each type of agent you want to recruit. How many new agents? Do you have the infrastructure for new agents? How many of your, what I call your sweet spot? And then how many top end? And then figure out what is the company average dollar you get from each one of those agents, and look at it. If you have a goal of a certain amount of money you need to make next year, let's say it's, I'll just make a number up, it's $200,000 to achieve your goals, and that could be low, I'm just picking a number. How many agents do you have to recruit to get to that number? So if new agents generate $5,000 for you a year, and the middle of the road agents give you 10, and maybe your top agents give you 40 or 50,000, what's the mix? How many agents are you going to need? And then, just like agents, how many calls, how many contacts do you need? How many calls do you need to make it, and how many appointments do you need to be able to convert? And NAR has amazing data. So for example, NAR says anywhere from 8 to 12 contacts to get an appointment. So what do you know your numbers? And I could go on and on, Verl, but I think that's the important thing with recruiting. And I'll just share one other thing if you wanted to interrupt me, Verl. I get a lot of this. I'm too busy putting out fires, got a minute, deal doctoring. And one of my brokers told me they put a sign on their door and they recruit an hour a day, and the sign says, I'm prospecting, are you? So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it really is cool. And I think that everybody has excuses as to why they're not succeeding where they believe they should be, and it almost always comes down to the belief that they don't have enough time. And so I love that you brought that up. And I have a visual in my mind of somebody juggling, and on each one of those balls is a key thing they have to do. They have to list and sell. They have to manage their agents. They have to keep deals together. They're a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister. You could be grandparents. And when you add recruiting to that and you try and juggle all of them, you have to decide what you have to put down. And so I think one of the things you said, which I think is a great takeaway, is ask yourself the question, are you the best person suited to be able to put the allotted time in to recruit the number of agents that's going to allow your business to be profitable? And if the answer is no, then you have to delegate it or outsource it or create a system so that it happens on a regular basis and it's an ongoing effort. So I think that's really wise advice, Amy. So let's talk a little bit about, as you're talking about recruiting, I mean, if you don't mind, let me just ask another question.
Sure.
Sometimes we get really focused on going after new people, and we don't really take good care of the people that we have, thinking that they just love us. How do you address that, and what are some of the things that you employ as a company to keep a higher level of retention?
Thanks, Burl. John, I'm going to take this in the beginning, and then you can come in. Is that okay, John?
Oh, run with it. Run with it.
One of the things that I think needs to happen at a company, whoever you're recruiting, whether it's experienced or new agents, you have to have a conversation with your existing sales associates and explain the benefit of bringing new agents. New agents don't seem to be as much of a threat to bringing experienced agents because people think the pie will get cut up more. So you have to have a conversation to make sure that there's buy-in. For me, more signs, because we have more experienced agents, means more business for everybody. But I would ask agents if, I think one of your key ways to bring new recruits in is to ask your existing sales force. You could say, if you had to sell your house and you couldn't do it, which realtor in our market would you have sell your house? Or with every transaction that we have a co-broke, go and talk to that agent. Would that agent fit here? Would they fit with our culture? And you're starting to engage the office and making sure they understand the vision of why recruiting is important. But as far as retention, we recently sent out a survey, Burl, to all our agents on why they joined and why they're staying with their offices. And it's been really amazing. And I think we've had the best results on that survey than any survey because people want to talk. I would recommend all brokers do something like that and find out why people stay with them, because they can even be anonymous, which is great. But then leadership has to constantly make them feel valuable. So not only sending out videos or giving them information on everything that's happening at the company, being able to communicate it down, but personal notes on milestones, lunch with top producers. I would recommend doing some kind of personality review, whether it's DISC or True Color. Find out all your agents what their strengths are, and so you can literally know what floats their boat and speak to that. Recognition all the time. It's not always money. And one of our brokers in the North Carolina market, when they have office meetings, they ask, what's exciting in your life? They don't only talk about business. So people share. They had a baby, their kid got accepted to college, their mother-in-law, just moved in with whatever it is. So I think all of those things. And Burl, last but not least, whatever your value prop is, have your marketing team create some kind of drip campaign to your agents. It could be video using BombBomb, which I love, and reminding them of all the things that you offer as a company. And what you're secretly doing is giving them the sound bites. So when they reach out to clients, they have that information in their brain and they can articulate why it's great working for the company and why they should list with them. So those are some ideas on retention, but you got to show the love. You got to show the love all the time. And it has to be a strategic plan to make sure that people understand that you have a plan and that they're a part of it.
I love those thoughts and ideas, John. Anything you want to add to the recruiting and retention piece?
Yeah, so I love hearing Amy speak about it, but it's, to me, look, when you're talking about trying to recruit, you're always talking about the promise that you're giving to an agent or to anybody that you're trying to convince to come on board and join this journey with you. I think that the retention piece of this is a huge opportunity in real estate specifically, because I think lots of real estate leaders do great at making the promise, much less actually keep that promise for an extended period of time, which presents great opportunity for all of us that are on the phones here now, is because you can actually go out and find those scenarios where agents aren't being delivered on the promises that were made to them. But the retention thing is critical. It's like any relationship that you have, you have to take care of it. And the people that you develop trust with you, as long as you're in the ballpark and you know you've got a model of the world in terms of the compensation and the culture and those things that are still in the same relative world of that what they're looking for, it's going to be very hard for them to leave you if you've developed trust and competency around what you're doing. You know, I think it's critical that our focus is always so much on recruiting, and even the thought process doesn't really go to not only just retention but productivity, especially in an industry that's got the stats that it does in terms of the lion's share of it being in the top 20%. And, you know, if you look across your MLS, I'm sure you've got plenty of people that are, if you take one deal or less and move those people out, you know, really what those numbers look like. And to really put all guns blazing towards helping the people that you currently have is a #1 priority to move that needle. You got 40 agents, a $250,000 price point, call it a 2.6% average yield on a commission rate. You know, that's at $6,500 a deal. 40 agents, that's 40 deals in a 20% company dollar. You're talking over $50,000 to your bottom line as a company owner right there. And that's by moving your agent productivity 1/12 of a deal per year. So what takes more effort, to go find somebody that can generate $50,000 of revenue for you, company dollar for you, or to move your folks 1/12 per month, or you know? So I think it's something that it's simple but tough. I think everybody on the phone probably gets an idea around it. It's tough to do because we get caught in the weeds, and we get caught in a lot of the other things that happen. So it's kind of one of those simple but tough principles in business.
I know as an entrepreneur this will resonate with you, but I like to say that we lead with revenue, not with expense. And by teaching your people how to lead with revenue and do the activities that will generate real revenue to allow them to have a better life, there is no greater retention tool than success.
Right. Absolutely.
So I love that. So let's talk about, and we may be jumping back and forth a little bit, the business models that are seeming to have the most impact on your ability to recruit or to have a conversation with agents that are coming into the market right now. What are these new disruptive models that are threatening our industry?
Well, I mean, I think you don't have to go too far, and I'm sure we've got brokers that represent all of them here. But I think what you'll see is transactional models, obviously, direct to consumer models that are out there that you're seeing more and more. And a lot of just sort of different testings. Now, will all of them still be around 3 or 4 years from now? Probably not. But there certainly will be ones that make big headways. So, like I said earlier, I think if you look across, whether it's airlines or, you know, transportation industries or entertainment, whatever it is, eventually every industry will get shaken up, and it's a good thing. I mean, it focuses folks to be able to really question the value that they're providing and see if it's still relevant, and you know, are we delivering on the promises that we are? And me even as an entrepreneur too, you know, that sort of litmus test is important. It forces us to make sure that we're saying and delivering on the promises that we're giving. So you know, I think that in particular, each of them will present their own different challenges. I think if you look at, you know, transactional models or flat fees or however we look at what those business segments are, obviously in an industry where margins are already razor thin, the concept is you've got to keep bringing more people on, and and having a finance or balance sheet that makes sense from an organizational standpoint. And then how do you supply support? I think to me that big challenge is how do you supply support and training and development in a way, and especially in an industry where productivity is, from a holistic view, very, very low. So that's a challenge that they'll have. And on the reverse side of that, from one of the traditional models, I think the challenge that those folks have, or those leaders have, is that you've got agents that are looking at splits, not tax returns, and they're looking at what's a large in part of how to shave costs rather than invest in businesses. So there's mindset challenges that certainly come into play. But it doesn't mean you should go match these models right away. And I know I mentioned that earlier, right? Because it could be detriment to your company if you'd go try to do that. So you certainly want to make sure, understand, watch, learn about the new models, make sure that before you make decisions to try to match something, because the challenge about matching price wars is it's hard to get back once you've done it. And if you don't have the cost structure that's set up in order to do that and move your financial statement to that level, it could be detrimental to your company.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You said something that I'd like you to just expand on a little bit, because I think that it's not something that everybody got. You said, what's more important to you, the split you're on, or what does it say in the bottom line of your tax return? I think a lot of people think that those two things mean the same thing. If I have a bigger split, I'm going to have a better tax return.
Right, and they're not. I mean, a lot of it in it doesn't. I mean, I'm sure we've all in real estate, and especially I've got story after story in my clients where, they'll send me emails saying, so and so left me 6 months ago. Here's what they did the last 12 months with me. Here's what they did, the last 12 months since they've been gone. Those that are really focused on developing and cultivating agent productivity, working lead generation systems, and sort of doing all of the pieces that I know are part of Amy's value proposition that she has. You see that, right? And I think that's the challenge that real estate leaders has, is this sort of sometimes tunnel vision that real estate agent professionals can have sometimes, where it is focused on the split. And they do look at every dollar that they spend as a cost, and none of it, relatively little of it, as an investment. But everybody who knows ever run a business knows that you got to spend money to make money. You've got to invest in things that help you grow. And, the challenge is changing their mindsets from being a real estate agent to being an entrepreneur who happens to have the product of real estate.
John, there was, Burl, there was one of our brokers, and a broker called and said an agent just left. She was going to be making $100,000, and he had no idea how to combat it. And when he realized, he let her go. She was at the new office. He called her to congratulate her. And at the end of it, we coached him. He said, I just wanted to let you know I did run the numbers. In reality, you would have been making about 95 here. And he said, silence. And what he learned, a big lesson, no matter what business model is impacting your business, you have to be able to articulate your value prop, and you've got to believe it, wherever they're going. And I love what you said, John, too. I think that was very quotable. Do they really understand their bottom line? Good news is that broker got that agent back after about 6 months because he left the door open. But you want your agents to be able to say, I just went to my accountant and he's amazed how much money I brought home and how little money I spent in comparison. So you need to be able to articulate those things first to your salespeople.
John, it may have been on our previous call, but you said something that I think resonated with me, and it might resonate with others, and that is that it doesn't matter what your business model is. It matters that you understand how to talk about it, and that you have confidence in it, and that you're able to express that value proposition. I know, Amy, you wanted to talk about that. We have that in a couple of slides, but keep that in the back of your mind, because I want to go back to that and really talk about some of the ways that we can articulate our value proposition. But I don't want to run out of time on this, so if it's okay with you, Amy, can we talk for just a minute about really helping the agents become more profitable, moving from where they are today to, creating more productivity. John started to say just by increasing your business by a single transaction across 40 agents makes such a big difference to your bottom line that the same effort in recruiting agents put into helping your people be more productive may yield you a higher net income. So what are some of the things that you do or that you recommend that brokers do to be able to increase that profitability and really to increase their productivity?
Thanks, Viral. A broker needs to be able to quartile their sales associates and see where they should spend their time and energy on people who will actually produce. That's important. And figure out with some kind of business planning tool how they could just, if it's, what do they need to move the needle for each sales associate so everyone does better? And they have to work those numbers. I mean, every agent's goals are different, but to John's point, just one more transaction from every agent makes everybody a lot more money. So you've got to figure out what that metric is at your company, but you have to constantly be tracking your agent productivity so you can find red flags and be able to coach to it. So skill development is always number one, and agents need that, and it has to be a progressive way so agents can graduate from one thing to another. Productivity training first and foremost, so they have the scripts, they have the information. This is not a difficult industry, a complicated industry. It is a difficult. You have to get that under your belt. And I think just having some kind of support in your office to make sure that no one gets off of your radar. So I think that would be important. And a lot of brokers are doing that through an onboarding program to track agents' business success, starting with new agents, and then, of course, for skill development with agents. And I think you have to leverage whatever's available for you that's working, whether it's your brand or your association, and find out what training is working. And survey your agents all the time, and then track and see what the results are if you bring in any kind of training or communication. I think also right now, never do anything without measuring it. It's useless today. And last, coaching. And I know, Viral, you're big on this. I think that a coaching program somehow, some way, if you are a selling broker or you don't have the time, you may need to leverage a coaching program. That's probably one of the most effective, whether other agents are mentoring or getting a coaching program. And Viral, I'm sure you have some input on what works and what doesn't, which agent is better at, where should you bring an agent in on coaching, that all can help.
Yeah, so, I've tried to lose weight for about 30 years. And until I hired a personal trainer to get my butt down to the gym and work out with me, I never really saw any success. And so, it's always good to have somebody that looks at your game from a different perspective, whether it's a manager or a broker owner, a coach or a mentor, but someone who doesn't have any other agenda than seeing you be successful. And I think that's what you're saying is you got to engage your people. I got a question for both of you, and I'm interested to hear how you respond to it. This world of I'm a real estate agent, I'm an independent contractor, and Amy, you're telling me you want me to track my numbers and hold me accountable and do my business plan, but I don't want to feel like I have a job. How do you address the mindset of the agent who wallows in mediocrity and doesn't want accountability?
I would refer them to your competition, is what I would do. Our legal team pores over my materials. I highly suggest, I strongly recommend, and I can't make someone be somewhere at a certain time. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. You have to watch your salespeople, and you have to cut people loose that are just dragging you down. And then the ones who really need the help, you need to help them. And if you can't do it, you need to figure out why waste time and energy on someone or really impact someone's life negatively if you can't really support them. I don't know if that was your answer, but that's my take.
I think it's a great answer. John? Same question.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that's a big part of what culture really is, right? And I think it's easy for us as leaders to give people answers or describe what we say our culture is, but the reality is the culture is what the people actually do, right? The actions and activities that make up those things. And sometimes by not making decisions on people, we also set the expectation of what our culture is by not doing anything and by letting non-performance happen. If people see that, then that's also relative to there. If that's part of the business model and you're okay with those folks, like, and that's what I think is great about this industry is you can have successful business model. There is no one size fits all approach to that, but I think it's got to make harmony, right? I think that's where leaders get themselves in trouble, is where they have a value proposition model that doesn't match a profit model that doesn't match a culture. I think, you know, no matter what those three pieces has, as long as they harmonize, you're going to be okay. But you have to be honest with yourselves and say, look, if coming on board with my company means that we're focused and we're going to deploy the tools and systems and leadership that we have to help you really grow your business, but yet 2/3 of your agents aren't producing anything, well, how does that really back you up in that? As opposed to really being aggressive on per person productivity and really working with people saying, look, I'm not telling you how you go out and get the productivity. I'm just saying that results matter. And we want to be a result-focused organization. And so if we can't get results and you don't have a vision for what you want to articulate, then maybe this isn't the right place for you. I've seen both models work, but again, I think you have to have from start to finish a value proposition model plus the profit model that can make sure you can still pay the bills at night, that makes sense with those, and then the culture that backs it up.
I love both of your answers. I love both of your answers to that question. For me, as an independent coaching company, my attitude is why would you pay me all this money and then not do what I ask you to do? And so it doesn't make any sense. And the second part is, you know, we don't let you quit, and it's going to be hard, and we tell you that coming in. And so there's a higher level of accountability because you've asked for it and you've invested in it. And so we tell people if we don't feel like it's a good fit, that we'd rather turn them down than let them down. And so maybe they need to share their talents with others. And so I love that you had that same attitude, Amy, as you were talking about bringing on people who you can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. You know, we're here to facilitate the process and create an environment for them to be successful, but we can't make them do it.
And yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that there's very few, if any, people that get into this industry and get into the profession itself to go make $25,000 to $30,000 a year. That's not really what they want, or $0 for that matter of how many. There may be some in the fray, but very, very few. So the reality is they got into it, they have an expectation. Sometimes, you know, part of leadership is knowing when to hug and when to kick, and people need both.
So Burl,
transition if you can for me. Sorry, Amy,
go ahead, Burl. No, I was just going to say, go ahead.
Amy, you go.
No, I was just going to say a coach is important. I pay a coach and I scream every time I have to get up and exercise with her, but I don't want to waste the money, so it makes a difference. Let's transition to your last thing here.
Well, let's talk real quick, John, about technology and what kind of money's invested in technology and how do we keep up with it?
Yeah, so I mean, again, going back to a broader theme that's hopefully everybody's kind of noticed throughout a lot of these things is that change is not only inevitable, but it is inevitable rather. I mean, and technology is no different. I think there was a guy that was at Inman that mentioned to me 2016. Real estate spent about $3.5 billion of investment in technology itself. So when you look at that amount of war chest that's there, I know Keller Williams announced about that same time to develop a $1 billion war chest to spend on technology innovations. Realogy is another one that's coming to bat on technology. A lot of the new entrants that we're talking about are all very technology focused companies. So the reality is it shouldn't surprise anybody on this phone there. But there's certainly practical applications. I get this question a lot about the role of technology that's out there. And for every one app that we find that's a game changer, we can find 2,000 of them that really didn't even move the needle anywhere. You know, personally speaking, I think that for those of you that have this question, you know, when it relates to, is it going to take the job of agents? I think I sort of espouse the idea that, look, I don't think technology will replace real estate agents. I think there's certainly a place for the knowledge and the professionalism and the help in making a very big and sometimes very difficult decision and process through buying a home. But I think that, so I don't think technology replaces the agent, but I do kind of espouse the idea that the agent who embraces technology and understands it and is efficient in it will replace the one that's not. So it doesn't make it less important, but it's definitely something that's here to stay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that technology for me is it just creates leverage. And so when you're using it correctly in your business, it allows you to get more done with less. And so you either have to use human resources or you have to incorporate a high level of technology or a combination of both if you want to be able to focus on the things that will give you the highest return on your time. And so I agree with you that technology is such a big play. And Amy, you've got such a vast experience with technology and helping, you know, agents get adoption of all the technology that's out there. Do you have a couple of thoughts that in determining where to spend your technology dollar and how to actually get your money out of it? Did I lose Amy, John?
Amy, get.
Oh no, I'm here. I'm sorry, I'm talking on mute.
Okay.
So Burl, value. Yeah, I start talking and I'm still on mute, and I wonder why you can't hear me. It's a gift. For the value proposition, what I strongly recommend you do is think about why people come to your company. Why do they stay? I've actually interviewed about 30 of my brokers, and I came up with a list of 12 value items that agents say they come to work for the company. And what we're working on now is impact statements on those. I'm helping my brokers create value propositions, and you need to do that for yourself. If you don't know how to do it, get a consultant to help you. It's feature benefit impact statement. It's kind of like Mad Libs. You need to be able to have these things roll off your tongue, and you need to articulate those to your salespeople. We actually had, we figured out 26 different things that the company that we do, and I created bomb emails with videos. And our brokers use them for recruiting, but a lot of them use them for retention. They need to own the dialogue. You need to own the dialogue as a broker or manager. And find a consultant or somebody maybe at your association where they can talk to you about how to create value proposition dialogue. And it's just like when you did your listing presentation, those of you who sold, it becomes so embedded in you that if anyone throws anything at you, you can handle it because you've got the basics down. But you have to define your market. Who's your competition? You should know that all the time. You should be able to define yourself. What's your vision, mission, values? Do you have core values? You need to be able to be passionate about who you are, and you have to really think about what is your niche? How do you impact your marketplace? And once you've got those three, that will create the value, but definitely interview your people and find out why people stay and why people came.
Yeah, I love that you've simplified creating your value proposition into those 3 steps, and then learning how to articulate it. And the other thing that I thought is just really sage advice is to survey your people as to why they stay. What is it about, you know, your company that keeps your people there? And those are the things that you need to use to speak to the agent population that you're recruiting or the franchisees that you're trying to sell franchises to. John, any final thoughts on what keeps brokers up at night, and how do we take this data, digest it, and apply some of the knowledge we've learned today?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, on just to piggyback on the technology piece. Look, technology should be deployed to solve a problem for you or your company, right? So, you know, whether that that problem is functional, like to save time or money, or emotional because it's your certain business processes that you have are just a complete pain in the butt for your agents and they don't really like it. Whatever the benefit truly should be there is it should serve a sole purpose for that benefit, and you should really reap the savings of that and know that you're doing that, right? So don't reach for the new greatest toy just because it's out and you're looking at those consumer responses about how great the thing is on their website, because you can get an analysis paralysis with all of the different tools and widgets and things that are out there. So make sure it serves a purpose in sort of the greater scheme of what your business is doing there. I think with all of this stuff, it goes back to, hopefully it's an awareness that, hey, you're not alone. A lot of leaders across real estate have very similar, you can see by some of the results, challenges that are out there. But that, a common theme that we've tried to keep throughout this is, your best company life, your best results are going to live behind sort of three things, and that's false generalizations, untested assumptions, and people. So deconstruct these fears, whether it's the lack of inventory being the true problem, which, it's not a mess, or, whatever the challenge is that you have in your current marketplace that's there. And then the last piece of that is then to be able to test the assumptions, right? Like use this when it comes to technology, look to the people that you currently have first, take care of them. And I think that, using that is a great way to start 2018.
Well, I appreciate all of your thoughts and your insights, Amy and John. On behalf of RIS Media and Workman Success Systems, thank you for sharing your insights, the results of the survey, and how to apply the knowledge that we've learned. For a copy of today's presentation, to go over the content that was presented, as well as a free copy of the Entrepreneur Blueprint from Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, just go to workmansuccess.com/BHG. You can download that, as well as a free disc assessment and a business consultation if you'd like to learn more about how having a private coach could help you in your business. So thank you all for being here. Let's have a great 2018. I look forward to talking to you on future webinars. Bye, everybody.